Hi, welcome back. Now that you've learned about the aperture and f-stops and the effect the size of the hole you choose has on the depth of field of your images, let's make sure you now understand how the size of the hole affects the amount of light coming into your camera. Looking at f2, a large hole, we know by picking this f-stop setting, the background is going to be soft. But what else is going to happen? We learned in lesson 1 the aperture is a variable hole in the lens that the light passes through on the way to your camera's sensor or film. So if we pick a large hole, then a large amount of light is going to pass through our camera to our sensor. If we pick a small hole, a smaller amount of light will pass through our camera into our sensor. All right, here's another way to think of this. Just think of curtains covering your bedroom window. If you open the curtain just a tiny bit, only a small amount of light shines through. But the more you open them, the more light floods the room. Back to your aperture, a small hole, f22. Small amount of light is being let in. But as we open the aperture to f4, more light starts to flood the camera sensor. We know that we need light to make an image, but too much light causes our image to be overexposed. Too light. Not enough light results in our images to be underexposed. Too dark. We need to create a balance. This is where the exposure triangle comes into play. We'll talk more about this throughout the future lessons, but the exposure triangle consists of the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. In Module 2, we'll learn all about shutter speed, but right now we need to see that if you increase your aperture, shutter speed must also be increased in order to balance out the overall exposure of your image. If we are shooting in a low light setting or a place with weak light, we need to use a big hole, f2, to soak up as much light as we can so we can increase our shutter speed. Small number, f2, large hole, large amount of light, the curtain is wide open, and a shallow depth of field. You get the nice, soft, blurry background. Large number, f22, small hole, small amount of light comes in, that curtain is just a slither, and you have lots of depth of field. The background is clearer. So, not only can we solve composition problems like a distracting background or creating depth in our image, we can also solve some lighting problems, all by choosing the right aperture setting. If we are shooting in a nice, bright scene, we can use a small hole, the f16 for example, to get lots of depth of field and less light. The smaller you go on your actual hole size, f22, the stronger the light you need, or, back to your relationship with the shutter speed, a slow shutter speed. Sometimes you need both. Okay, we know the aperture is the hole in the lens that allows light to reach the sensor or film. We know aperture is measured in f-stops. We know f-stop determines the size of the hole, and the size of the hole determines the depth of field plus the amount of light that reaches your camera sensor. You got this. Now, how do we take all this information and use it to craft our images so they read well? In Lesson 4, we will start seeing examples on why you might choose one aperture over another. I'll see you there.